Yes.
Okay. Over a period of months, I have worked with many coworkers who could speak Spanish as well as they could English. And they often talked amongst each other in Spanish, and it felt to me like this was the language they knew by heart. And naturally, there were some miscommunications with them and the employers who couldn't speak Spanish. And I thought, if the employers were to learn Spanish and understand sufficiently, and then there would be a better bridge between them and the workers, creating more efficient worker-employer relationship. The Spanish-speaking population has reached staggering 50 million in the United States, according to an article by LA Times this March, just passed. With ongoing percentage of Spanish speakers in our neighborhood, I strongly believe that this is a good time to try to learn Spanish. I've researched fairly extensively on the subject and found that there were many good practical reasons to educate yourselves on Spanish. First, Spanish speakers obviously will face larger job market, sometimes even for a better paying job. There are, of course, many Spanish-speaking patrons who would welcome services provided in English, but as I have experienced in my own work field, being able to understand the primary tongue of the patron helps immensely when you're trying to sell something. Bilingual people have a history of being hired faster and into a bigger job market, it seems. In this article written back in 1995, entitled "Bilingual is a Bonus" in LA Times, by Lisa Leff. Bilingualism back in 1995, where there were less diversity in California, was an aspect of an aspiring worker that is deemed positive. The article talks about employers who interviewed with them to reveal some standards by which they measure the job applicants, and the employers included people from Disneyland and various other companies. Employing end of the job market had admitted that in this 1995 story, bilingualism, and particularly Spanish-speaking ability, was something they have taken to be plus when it comes to chances of being hired. But what about now? Well, according to USA Today, it's essential. In this article published in 2007, which was only 4 years ago, about businesses that deal with suppliers and buyers, customers, which that is the entirety of the small to medium-sized business world. The article states that it is impossible for a Californian business to have no interaction with a Spanish-speaking patron or a supplier. A large trend of, quote, obvious demographic change in California has resulted in Spanish being essential to survival in the trade world. Accordingly, those businesses started to make these basic knowledge in Spanish to be a requirement for employment. Knowledge in Spanish also even helps in getting paid better. It sometimes results in a higher weekly wage, according to a local paper in St. Petersburg. The paper, it's called St. Petersburg Times. And the article introduces how vigorously the police department in the region are trying to hire more bilingual officers, especially with Spanish speakers, after a series of crime events that were impossible to progress into solely because of the lack of Spanish speakers there. The article talks about extra $50 a week, a bonus check they have launched since 2001, only directed to the bilingual officers. Now, to be a business person is to be a strategist, at the same time being a good employer. Being a good communicator with the workers is at least as important as being a good business planner. I will first talk about the strategy aspects of it. One division of marketing team in Merrill Lynch retirement program had attempted to deliver a presentation to encourage members of a certain organization, namely ABC, the American Broadcasting, to invest in their program. The presentation had apparently received generally positive reactions from the potential patrons, but not from exclusively Spanish-speaking employees. First, the industry-specific term did not go through well to people who did not understand English completely. And second, retirement plans are a serious business, so employees did not feel secure as to invest in a retirement plan that is explained in a language that is barely understood. At next attempt, they let a bilingual person lead a presentation, disregarding all the potential risk, as even the bilingual person was sometimes unfamiliar with all those industry-specific terms. But it turned out to be a success. As I mentioned in the earlier part of the presentation, it is really important to establish a communicative relationship with the employees as an employer. And as the residents of the states, with 37% Hispanic population, it is an understatement just to say that there is a good chance of hiring a Spanish-speaking employee. Thomas R. Maloney, an economics professor at Cornell University, had produced an academic article agreeing with just that. In the article, he titled "Successful Multicultural Management," published only for people within the college, states that the employers who learn Spanish begin to overcome the language barrier and gain respect employees for making an attempt to learn the language. This means that establishing a more comfortable method to communicate with the employees is important, but just showing the employees the respect that the employers have in trying to understand and learn their culture kind of builds the better bond between employees and the employers. This country, and particularly this region, we have an immense number of Spanish speakers, and therefore media and culture directed to and created by them. I feel failing to take advantage of such heavy intellectual resources is too big of a cost just for not wanting to learn the language. I will have to bring up another essay written in USA Today by a journalist named Deborah Sharp, which she described inability to speak Spanish as a handicap. Spanish, according to her, had penetrated into American culture so much, especially over the last 50 years, that ones who do not know how to speak it are missing out on a vast amount of information that are being produced exclusively in Spanish America alone. Spanish is such a widely spoken language throughout the American continent that I want to urge you that knowing the language will often open up a great chances of intercultural education. Like that of the Europeans, we are mostly trying to break the language barrier by making languages as required courses. Wait, we are not. Oh yeah, Europeans are doing that, is basically what I'm saying. By the way, we too should do that. We'll benefit from Spanish education to be able to follow the pan-continental trend. Jay Hornberger, of an American Foundation, which an immigration and charity forum in Texas has made a report describing how many cases there are of Spanish speakers being dismissed from jury duty just because the officers of the judicial system would not understand the language. If the public officers were to be educated on the subject, not only just the lingual specialists, but all of them, then there will be less occurrences of Spanish-speaking population being politically isolated. If we all try to learn it and make it a trend, then there will be more cultural assimilation and understanding, and therefore more supply of public services of these hugely populous group in America. We do not need to be reminded why it is important to learn this language that we are so familiar of. We see our neighbors and we see the situation that needs knowledge of this language all the time. Sadly, we do not speak much Spanish. According to a New York Times article back in 2010, Americans are expected to know at least the least amount of foreign language